Hello and welcome to PixARK. This is Ace. I'm here today in Testlandia, my little area that I set up so that I can do some demonstrations. And today we're going to be talking about the various workbenches and stuff that you can put down in PixARK. It's not really clear sometimes where their nearby range is. In other words, they have an ability to pull from nearby inventories. And although you can show that range once you place it, you can't really see that range before you place it, so sometimes it can be a bit confusing where those ranges are. So I thought I'd make a demonstration area here and show you exactly which range is calculated on each of the various things and what floor space they take up physically in this space. So let's get started. We start with the basic workbench, and in all of these, almost all of them, it's basically an 11 by 11 box. So you've got 5 on one side and 5 on the other side of the center of the bench, if you will. In this case, the center of the bench, since it's only 1 by 2, is the right-hand side. So you can see that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares to the right. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait a minute, 4? Well, because the fifth one is part of the bench itself. So in this case, the side it's calculating from is the right-hand side of the bench if you're standing on the side with the vice handle. Front and back are pretty straightforward, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can see that I've set up a few chests that sort of cross that barrier, and I'll show you a little bit later how that's calculated on one of the other benches. So on the basic workbench anyways, it takes up 1 by 2 on the floor, and the center point is the right-hand side. On the next one over, let's take a look at the magic workbench. Now this one, again a 1 by 2, and again it's on the right hand side, right? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, wait a minute, 5, that can't be right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yep. So on the magic bench, standing on what I believe is the front, because everything's facing you and there's the curve, they chose to flip it around the other way and make the center be the left hand side, because, well, because whatever. That's what it is. The magic workbench takes up 1 by 2, but it uses the left side as its center point. So moving on down the line, let's go to the tailor's workbench. Well, now this takes up 1 by 2 again, but not really, because they decided to center it over a third space. So it really takes up 1 by 3, and then of course because there is now physically a center, it's actually easy to compute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait a minute, how does that work? Well, isn't that funny? What they did was they centered it on the center of that center square, and because it's centered on that, it's actually splitting the outsides in half. So what I did here was I went ahead and put some storage boxes, one facing into that space, so it's getting cut in half from the front, and the other one facing out, so it's getting cut in half from the back. I've got one facing in with a quarter of it outside, and I've got one completely inside, of course. And let's see what we have access to. Well, let's go in here, and we can apparently see the T-Rex skull, and we can see rabbit fur and fiber. So rabbit fur, fiber, and a T-Rex skull. Everything else we can't see. Well, let's go and take a look at what that is. This one should be pretty straightforward. This is completely in, and of course that's the T-Rex skull and the fiber. So this one, as we would expect, would be completely available because it's completely contained inside the box. This one is 75% inside the box, and in fact there's our rabbit fur. So these two are able to be seen by the tailor's workbench. These two, both with the front half and the back half in, are not able to be seen. We cannot see the terror bird beak in them, and we cannot see the Triceratops skull. So on the tailor's workbench, be aware it's going to split squares like that, and be aware that it's not going to take one that's half in, half out in that direction. I didn't do one where I tested if this were being cut directly in half, but I did go ahead and try the quarter. And actually you can't really do, because if we moved it over one space, then it would be 3/4 out and 1/4 in. So I'd venture to say that will probably fail. Let's look at the next one. Now the next one gets a little funky. This is the die workbench, and it doesn't really use a cross of 5. It sticks 1 out here on the 6, which is for the edge of this curve. So floor space, there's your floor pattern. You can place blocks wherever there is the sandstone foundation. You cannot place blocks where there is the steel foundation. And the side on that is pretty straightforward. It's pretty obvious where the center of that is, right? There it is, and it's 5 on the other side. Looking next at the fabricator, now this uses 3 by 3, 9 total squares. They could have moved it back just a little bit and just used 6, but they chose to center it, so 9 it is. And then again, that's pretty straightforward, which one's the middle of the 9, of course, and so then you've got 5 on all the sides. So pretty straightforward about how to calculate the center of it. But do be aware when you're placing it that it's going to seem like it's sitting pretty far off the wall, and you're maybe thinking that, well, I'm too far forward. Well, it's just that it sits so far forward and uses up 9 instead of 6. So next, the alchemy stove. The alchemy stove, very straightforward, uses 5 squares and a cross, and very obvious which one is the center there. No need to do some weird calculations. The cooking pot. The cooking pot uses a really interesting shape. 7 squares centered on the cooking fire. That makes sense. And you can, obviously rotate this when you place it down to sort of fit into what you need to. But again, you'll be able to place a block wherever there's a sandstone, but not where there's the steel. So still in 5 by 5 from the center square, well, what exactly is the center square of a 4 by 4? So here, or 2 by 2 rather, here is the smelter, and it uses 2 by 2, uses 4 squares. So which one is it exactly? Well, let's do the math. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That means that this side is your center. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That means that this back left corner, if I'm looking from the front, is the center of our smelter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks, and we're outside the range. So indeed it is this block right here that is the center point. And on next door to the industrial smelter, well, now that's a huge one. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 25, which means that there is a clear center, and that would be this and this right here. And if we do the math, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 indeed, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a big build, 25 squares used, and the center pretty clearly right there. This one's also pretty clear. The industrial cauldron uses 3 by 5, so that makes for a clear center on the 3 by 5. And if we do the math on that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yes, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yes. So your center here is right down the middle there, and right up the middle right here. The campfire, the lowly little campfire. Pretty hard to figure out where the center is on this one, right? There it is. Still uses the 5 by 5, or 11 total. And same for the crucible. I put the easy ones down here on the end. Very simple one space builds. Very straightforward on where they are. The mortar and pestle, same. It's also going to use a show nearby, as well as, of course, the inscription book, and all very obvious which one is the center. Now, interestingly enough, for the wind burnisher, look at how small that show nearby box is. Completely gets away from the 11 by 11. I didn't bother to show the amount of space that this takes up because honestly, if you're building a wind burnisher, I just don't know why. It only works when there's wind. It does work much faster than the mortar and pestle, but only when there's wind. And if you're building above ground and waiting for there to be wind to do your burnishing, yeah, I just don't know what to do to help you with that. We can go into this and we can say, well, I've got chitin in there. So if I come into the object, can I see the chitin? And the answer is yes. So even though this box is very clearly half in, if you want to call it that, then that can see that. And what I did here was to show all the different inventories that they have in the game, well, all the different types of the large boxes that they have in here. And I was starting to do some testing on which of these inventories can be seen and which ones can't, because clearly there were some differences in what could be seen into. But then I quickly realized that really the problem was that they're different. Let's take a look here. I've got 2 huge storage boxes stacked on top of each other, one more over there. Let's just look in these 2 for a moment. And you can see that I've got Dark Magic and Bone in the first one. and I've got light magic and flint in the other, and I stacked them up just to see if there was a difference in the stacking. If I come and I look inside the alchemy stove, well, I can see in those. I can see my dark magic stone, I can see my light magic stone, so the alchemy stove can see in both of those vaults. But if I go in here to the mortar and pestle, all I can see is chitin. Well, you're saying, wait a minute, I didn't even see any chitin. Well, there's chitin here in this small storage box. So the mortar and pestle can see into the small storage box, cannot see into the vaults. The alchemy stove can see into the vaults. So not only is it vaults can be seen or can't be seen, it's that individual things have their ability to see into stuff. Now, obviously, we would expect that they're going to take care of this and that this is going to be one of those bugs that they're going to work out. So don't plan on, hey, I can never build a huge storage box because my mortar and pestle can't see in it. Well, eventually it will likely be able to, but you probably want to take that into account in the beginning. I stacked up two, and these blocks over here are to show how I did it. You can't place the large storage box on top of the huge storage box on top of the other huge storage box. And you can't place it directly on top of dirt. It actually has to be placed on something. So in this case, you can see the wall I placed here. You can build up a wall, or in this case I placed a couple blocks and a foundation. You can set that on top of that foundation and then delete those blocks and place the other one on top of the foundation down here, so you end up with two stacked up on top of each other. Let's take a look down here at the end now. There are some that do not have any show nearby, but they do still take up a footprint, so I put all those down here just so we can see the footprint on them. The feed pot, 3x3, and the ore detector, again 3x3. The fruit display stand is sort of an interesting one. It uses a 3x1, but with this little piece sticking out. And we can see that if we're standing on the end, the piece that's sticking out is the one, of course, that sticks out. Feed trough, very straightforward 1x2, no surprises there. And the compost bin, very easy 3x3. Now this one's a little weird. The wind-driven generator has a row down here on the end that really seems like, well, why did you even bother locking those out? But they did. You can't build anything in those squares. That may be fixed in a future version, but as of this version, it wasn't able to be built there. Now, the thing is again, we're back to the wind thing. Why would you build this? It's only going to work when there's wind. So if you're building a wind-driven generator, stop and think about that. Now, the regular generator, if you look at the size, almost seems like it could fit on 2 wide, but they went ahead and made it 3 wide, so it's 3x4, 12 spaces, and uses up that. Here we are with the fridge, easy 1x1, and of course the air conditioner 1x1. Now the brewing barrel, that's a big one, and it uses all of them, 3x4. I don't know why they did the firearm work table the way they did. It's very clearly a 1x2, same as the basic workbench and the magic workbench, but they went ahead and locked out the 2 in the front and the 2 behind. So be prepared for that footprint if you try and place the firearm work table. Ice cellar, very basic, 2x2, as well as the preserving bin, 2x2. And the petroleum tower almost was a 3x3, but because of the way the spout and that all work out, there's nothing in this spot right here. So you can actually build something in that corner if you want to. And I placed this here with this wall to remind me to talk about placement for a moment. So it's especially noticeable with the ice cellar. If I went ahead and tried to build this ice cellar 2 spaces back up against this wall, it wouldn't place. It would say, well, I'm running into something. But if I demolish this wall, put the ice cellar back there, and then rebuild the wall, it works just fine. So although it shows that it's only using 2x2, when you place it, it's actually using 2x3. It would be using these 2 squares here as well. But once it's placed, you can go back and put something in those squares. That's why I'm only showing that it's using 2x2. Alright, that finishes our little tour. I hope you got something useful from this. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments down below. And if you'd like me to expound on something or cover something else, feel free to mention that down there and I'll get to that as well. If you like this, please do hit the like, and if you'd like to subscribe, I'll be posting probably at least a video a day, if not more. I appreciate your feedback, your input, and I appreciate you watching today. Have a good day.